Hi everyone, welcome to you all to today's webinar introducing the StartOut Pride Economic Impact Index. While we're waiting a few more moments for everyone to arrive, just a few words. As a StartOut and SoCo's Lab initiative, we're committed to removing barriers for LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs and would like to take a minute to show our appreciation to our sponsors. Great. And I'd like to introduce you to Julie Davis.
Thank you so much and welcome everyone. I want to give a special thank you to StartOut and to SoCo's Labs for putting on this event today. And an extra special thank you to everyone who's joining us. We're going to hopefully have some folks who I know are still logging in. We had a little bit of technical issue here at the beginning, but we're so glad you're with us. I know if this is the point on a Monday when you look down at your to-do list and think, oh, there's still things to do on here. So I know it's valuable time and we really appreciate you joining us. As Jessica started to mention, I am Julie Zellman Davis. I am with an office at the SEC that has an exceptionally long title. We are the Office of the Advocate for Small Business Capital Formation. We like to think that title, the long title, is commensurate with our big mission. So I'm joined on the screen, although I'm not sure he's on my screen anymore, by Andres Wydler. He is the Executive Director of StartOut. And we were planning to be joined today by Vivian Ming, who is the founder of SoCo's Labs, but unfortunately she woke up not feeling well today. So we're hoping she's gonna feel better really quickly, and we are gonna go on and do our demo and the presentation without her today, unfortunately. We encourage everyone who's logged in to use their Q&A or the chat feature, I'm thinking, to send us your comments, thoughts, questions. We're gonna have a dedicated Q&A at the end, but we would like for this to be as interactive as possible. So we welcome you to chat with us as we go. At this point, I'm going to give the standard disclaimer that SEC staff always have to give when we do a public event, and that is that my views, the views I express today, are my own and not necessarily those of the entire SEC. But with that said, I think the plan will be that Andres and I will each give a little bit of an overview about the SEC and my office and our team, and then Andres will give an overview about StartOut, and then he'll go right into showing off their beautiful index that they've worked hard to create and is giving us a lot of data about what's happening in the marketplace. So I'll start with a little bit of background on the SEC, and I'm going to pause here for a minute. Can everybody hear and see me? I'm not seeing a lot of pictures on the screen. I just want to make sure that we're still doing okay here. Jessica or Andres, are you on, and are we?
Yep, we're on. Because of the technical difficulties, I'm just requesting all participants to mute themselves and also stop video sharing so we can focus on you guys. So, yep.
All right, that's great. That's great. Well, just interrupt me if we need to pause for a minute, but I'll just start in with a little bit about our office and the SEC. So the SEC is an independent agency. We have a three-part mission that's protecting investors, ensuring orderly and efficient markets, and promoting capital formation. And I'm guessing a lot of folks just think of that in connection with the public markets, because obviously that's a huge part of the public markets, or a huge part of what we do and what we oversee. But what many people don't think about is that we also have quite a touch on the private markets. We are responsible for writing the rules that companies and funds use to raise capital, investment capital, whether they're doing a public deal like an IPO or a not registered or an exempt deal. And all of those make up the investment capital paths, or I guess tools in the toolkit. So our office comes in at that point where we are dedicated to trying to help companies who are looking to access investment capital. So we're a relatively new startup ourselves. We were just stood up in January of 2019. The office was created by statute by Congress with almost unanimous bipartisan support. And anytime you hear about unanimous bipartisan support, you know there must have been a real need in this time. I think policymakers recognize that there's a gap between the role that we as a society have come to expect from small businesses in creating jobs, innovating, creating wealth. And there's a gap between those expectations on small business and the accessibility of capital to meet them. So hence the need for advocates. One question that you may have at this stage is because we get it a lot, is what do you mean by small business? And it's really quite a broad range. Everyone defines it a little differently, but in our office, it is anything from an early stage startup to a smaller public company up to 250 million in public float. So definitely small is relative. But I think that even though that is a broad range, one commonality between all of those companies is that most do not have a dedicated government relations office. You know, when you're a small company, you encounter a problem, you put your head down, you work through it, you move on to the next problem, or hopefully the next success. And you don't necessarily have the time or the resources to sit down and call up or write a letter or seek out your government regulator or agency to explain what went wrong, or what the friction that you encountered was. And so it's where our office is taking a very proactive approach to engaging with a variety of voices from small businesses and investors. We don't just wait for folks to come to us, although we very much encourage that. We will talk a lot about our website and our email address and ways that we try to get input to come in, but we also go out, and we were doing a lot more of traveling before we turned to a telework posture with COVID, but we're doing a lot of virtual events, and hopefully we'll get back to in-person events soon, to go out and gather perspectives and feedback on how the Commission can improve access to capital for small businesses. And one critical and major component of our team's engagement is that the statute that Congress passed asks us to identify and report on unique challenges faced by women and minority-owned businesses, and also businesses affected by natural disasters. So we get to specifically and with intentionality embrace this opportunity to engage with underrepresented groups. We fully recognize that the economy in the country is hurt by systemic challenges and by underestimating certain entrepreneurs. There's just a whole lot of unrealized potential that is being left on the table. So we are dedicated to elevating the importance of identifying and quantifying gaps in the marketplace, with goals of helping to bring into the market in greater numbers those who've traditionally faced heightened challenges in accessing capital. So our office puts out an annual report with data on the state of small business capital formation. So we're constantly seeking various data sources to help us quantify and illuminate the challenges faced by underrepresented entrepreneurs and their investors. So it's that unrelenting thirst for data, which is how we came to collaborate with StartOut. And it's why we're eager to see projects like the index that Andres will be showing to take off. So with that, I would like to segue to Andres to let him talk a little bit about StartOut and to start demoing this beautiful index.
Here we go. Sorry about that.
There we are.
So here we are. Thank you so much, Julie, for having us. Great honor, actually, for us to be here with you. You do amazing work, and we're just excited that you're willing to share our index with your audience and joining in our audience. So that's super exciting. I have the whole list, of course, of people with us right in front of me. A lot of startup members, which is awesome. For those who don't know us, StartOut is the largest national nonprofit to support LGBTQ entrepreneurs. And so what we want to do, and we're doing every single day, is to increase the number, the diversity, and the impact of LGBTQ entrepreneurs, and then amplify their stories to drive the economic empowerment of our community. So we're hands-on supporters of LGBTQ entrepreneurs throughout the country, a few international ones, but mainly throughout the country. And the research project that we're going to talk a little more in a moment is one project, one of the programs we're doing together with SOCOS. So even though Vivian unfortunately couldn't join us today, I would love to briefly give the mic to SOCOS to introduce what they're doing.
Great, thanks Andres. I am Sasha. I'm Chief of Staff for SOCOS Labs. And SOCOS is basically a mad science incubator. So you might wonder what that is. We're dedicated to solving the world's really important problems pressing in fields like economics, education, and healthcare. To bring us a problem, and if we think we can solve it, we'll build the whole thing and then give it away for free. That's Vivian's mission. Vivian unfortunately couldn't be with us. She's the CEO and co-founder of SOCOS Labs, but we are happy to present the index today. So enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sasha. So if it's okay with you, Julie, let's drive to the index. And what all of you just came to see today, let's dive right in. So thank you, Jessica, for running index. So if you go to startout.org/SPEII, what you'll see right there, this is where you land. So you see a map, you see the inclusion impact index, you see a lot of things. So basically, what are we doing? Why did we even start this project? Very simple. What isn't measured doesn't get addressed. So in order to address the imbalance of opportunities for LGBTQ entrepreneurs, that is to startup entrepreneurs, and their straight counterparts, we had to measure. We had to measure and make sure that everyone knows what the situation actually is. Lots of assumptions, a lot of false assumptions out there. Unfortunately, no one else is doing that. We're not a research organization per se, but by teaming up with SOCOS, we managed to come out with an incredible product, I believe, and hopefully you'll be impressed as well. So when you see this map right away, you'll see the green highlight is LGBTQ. That's the population we're looking at right now in the map view, the next one, next green one, and in means. So what you see right away is that there's a lot of bubbles, there's a lot of colors, but there's not enough pretty colors. So what I mean with pretty colors is what we're measuring here is how is our community doing. So what we're seeing, I apologize for more technical difficulties, but basically what we're seeing here is the map of the United States. Red means big achievement gap, greens means good performance. So if you go to totals, please. Thank you, Jessica. You'll see the situation actually much worse. What you basically see here is one big green dot, not surprisingly, in San Francisco, and then lots of smaller dots, and most of them, unfortunately, red, meaning there's a huge achievement gap between what LGBTQ entrepreneurs are measured to contribute and what they could be contributing instead. When you then also look at the bubble size, that's the impact scale. So what is the impact of San Francisco? Very large. What's the impact of Los Angeles? Very small and red. What's the impact of New York? Relatively small, and orange also. A lot of opportunity to improve the performance.
Andres, this is Julie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, great, great. I was muted, so I wanted to make sure. I think this is fascinating data that you all have, and it goes really well with what our office is doing, which is trying to show there's a lot of challenges for small businesses and especially for underrepresented groups, but there's also a lot of successes. And so I love that with this map, you can see where there are the bigger dots and the green dots and the pretty colors, as you say, and folks can go to their own city. Like for example, I'm originally from Texas, so I see Austin is at least a little bigger dot there. I love that I look forward to, I think you're going to get to this in a little bit, but just to drilling down into one particular city and being able to see the data that you have for that is just, it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. So it is pretty sobering data, actually. Let's just have a quick look at it. What are we measuring here? We're measuring contributions of LGBTQ entrepreneurs to the economy. And so what exactly does that mean? What do we measure in terms of impact? And if we look to the left-hand side, we see the funding, jobs, patents, and exits. So these are the four parameters that we're checking, and then rolling up to have an overall index number, an overall color, and an overall size. And so that's what we're measuring there in terms of impact of all the entrepreneurs. Now, if you look carefully, let's take the funding size, and we're still in the US overall. Actually, yeah, so you basically see the overall funding, the actual is measured in dark blue. So if we mouse over the actual one, we see the actual estimated funding over the last 20 years, that's what we're measuring, was roughly $70 billion. Now, if you go to the estimated though, also actual, sorry, that is just the $70 billion. The blue one is just so small, it's $5.5 billion. So a small portion is the actual measured one, and then a much larger one is the estimated. What's the difference? So we know we're undercounting entrepreneurs. Not every LGBTQ entrepreneur is out, and we only measuring here on the actual numbers, the dark blue ones, the out LGBTQ entrepreneurs who are willing to identify themselves as LGBTQ entrepreneurs in the United States. Shockingly, of the roughly 120,000 entrepreneurs overall that we have in the United States, only about 350 to 400 were willing to identify themselves. In and of itself, of course, a huge finding. But because we know that's not everything that's out there, we're also using algorithms measuring the rate of entrepreneurship as well as the expected percentage of LGBTQ people in an area, and calculate what the funding should be. So that's the larger blue one. So it's very important to distinguish the two. And as we get better and better and better data, of course, that gap will shrink. But still, the fact alone that so many entrepreneurs are not willing to identify themselves as out speaks volumes on the opportunities of entrepreneurs. The second piece we're looking at is the achievable one. So we go from actual to actual estimate and now to achievable one. And that's really the exciting, for me actually, this is the most exciting part of the project. Why? So this is not a shaming exercise. This is not an exercise if look how badly you're doing, look how much discrimination there is in your area, quite to the contrary. This is look what kind of funding, how many jobs, how many patents, how many exits you could generate with equal access. So the achievable number then is the one that is the prediction based on a best-in-class comparison. For example, if you have the 3 best performing cities in funding would have an index number of, let's say, 85 or 80, then we would allocate that to that overall number. But let's go from all of the United States. Let's go to some area. Let's go to Denver, for example. So a mouse over Denver, you get actually already quite a bit of information right there. And if you look at Denver, then $60 million in total funding over the last 20 years, 0 exits, only 5 LGBTQ entrepreneurs out of a total of 2,500 entrepreneurs. So clearly, there's a lot more that we would expect there. Hence, the big difference between the actual and actual estimate numbers. So you see that in funding, actually doing reasonably well compared to achievable. Jobs, they achieve all the jobs that we would expect them to achieve. Same with patents and exits. So they're actually doing quite well in terms of the totals. in terms of those numbers. But now if you go to means instead, so we're still in Denver, of course, look at the difference now in jobs, patents, and exits. So the mean suddenly a totally different picture, meaning even though we have a decent mean funding figure, the impacts in jobs, patents, and exits are much smaller. So that already shows on a local basis the tremendous opportunities that exist in terms of job creation if we funded and enabled more LGBTQ entrepreneurs to be successful. In Denver, we could have created, and you see the number up there, over the last 20 years, LGBTQ entrepreneurs could have created 35,000 odd more jobs in that economy. So we can go with that, right? We can go the big gap we see, less a gap in estimates, bigger gap in actual funding. When you go back to the totals, what we also can do, which is also interesting, there's a little everyone else button. So let's quickly hit that. And that is all the entrepreneurs out there. And naturally, in the totals view, that the numbers of LGBTQ entrepreneurs is small, which is reasonable. Now, if we go back to the means, then we see suddenly, oh, wow, actually in funding, the LGBTQ entrepreneurs do better than what everyone else is doing. So that's pretty awesome. They're raising more money, but they're creating a lot fewer jobs. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean they're not as good entrepreneurs as the straight entrepreneurs if they create fewer jobs with the same amount of funding? Very unlikely. Now, what it basically means is that in terms of the industries that they're after, these are less job-intensive industries that they're creating opportunities. So this is just like a brief overview right now in terms of what we can see in one area. If we go perhaps now to Los Angeles, let's do that for a moment. Great, and let's go to totals again. So you see the index, and let's take out everyone else because it's obviously just dilutes all the pictures. So the actual index is close to nil in funding. So interestingly enough, Los Angeles, even though it's in major metropolitan areas for some incredible businesses, they are missing out on a lot of the funding side. When we switch over to means, so we have an index number of 10, we switch over to means, and actually it's a little better if you look in terms of the opportunities for LGBTQ entrepreneurs on a relative basis. And so we have a decent funding rate, we have decent job rate, exit rate. So basically all of that pretty much shows you that yes, there is an opportunity there for the Los Angeles LGBTQ entrepreneurs in general, but we don't have enough of them. That's why the total numbers are so small.
Andres, this is really fascinating and depressing. Not surprising because we know this space, but it is depressing. One of the things that we hear a lot about in our office and focus on is also by industry type. So I see you've got industry fingerprint on there, and would love for you to show that off as well. You know, in terms of different types of capital that different types of companies raise, it really, you know, we see that it varies a lot by industry. So for example, if you are, you know, when we're looking at IPO numbers, we tend to see a lot of biotech companies in there because they have that pre-revenue need, intensive need for capital. When we look at crowdfunding data, we might see more, in fact, we do see more from the beverage industry, software industry, entertainment, you know, areas, industries that would have more of a customer base and of a loyal following. And, you know, sometimes I think the companies see it as a win-win when they use crowdfunding there because they both raise the capital, but they also let their customers have some skin in the game. And enhance that relationship. So really I'm interested, and we'll let you, I want to spend a little time with you on the industry fingerprint because I think this is fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, it is very fascinating. And by the way, it is an enormous treasure trove of data that we're
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable how much data is in there. So we looked at millions and millions of entrepreneurs, and then we boiled it down to roughly 116, 120,000 entrepreneurs whom we identify as growth entrepreneurs. And then we went down and identified the LGBTQ entrepreneurs amongst them. So it's an enormous amount of data in here. And so a lot of the data, including the really exciting industry fingerprint, shows how attractive now some of those areas are for certain industries. So if you look at, for example, the entertainment, if you mouse over, we're in LA right now to make sure, and then the means view. So we look at the entertainment, all companies there, the entertainment companies, and there are startup companies are 529. I shouldn't say startup companies. These are companies that are measured that either raised $1 million in angel funding, venture funding, or had exits and people. So all of that is further explained, of course, in the methodology section. That is all part of the website. I don't want to geek out too much on all those details, even though I could speak about it for hours.
We all geek out, it's okay.
Yes, we are. So if you look at LGBTQ companies, where it means, so there's actually 5 LGBTQ entrepreneurs out of 529. So that actually in our index is not bad. When you look at banks or retail, let's go to banks for a moment, just to the left of it. And if you look at there, basically have all the companies of 30 companies and 0 entrepreneurs who identify as LGBTQ entrepreneurs. Same with retail, for example, there's just 7 companies overall and 0 LGBTQ entrepreneurs. So let's stay in entertainment again. Let's click on entertainment. But then also, and I'm deviating a little bit from the startup Pride Economic Impact Index, and let's quickly go to female, just as a comparison. So interestingly enough, and this is just the exact same index, by the way, but for the female audience. Interestingly enough, for in the entertainment, in the means view, female entrepreneurs are actually much worse off than LGBTQ entrepreneurs. So even though it's a huge entertainment town, of course, and we think there's a lot of opportunities there for female entrepreneurs as well, not exactly the case. So what we can say here is for LGBTQ entrepreneurs, they're pretty much meeting they're matching the potential, but female entrepreneurs in the entertainment sector in Los Angeles, they're still underrepresented. Now, again, it can be depressing, as you mentioned, Julie, but I don't find this depressing at all. This is basically measuring what we need to know, so then we can actually, inform the decision makers, we can inform policy makers, we can inform the mayor's office, their development office. Hey, look, you have this opportunity here. You can really invest in a few more female entrepreneurs, or help them succeed. Use your contacts you have, and then get there. And so this is really interesting. So and actually we now go to all as well. Jessica, if you could hit all, please. And this is actually quite exciting. So might be counterintuitive, but the achievement gap for all growth entrepreneurs in the United States is actually, it's not 0 everywhere, quite to the contrary. If you look at best-in-class performance, there's still a lot of opportunities to grow entrepreneurial activities and get a lot of value out of it in terms, again, of jobs created or funding raised or exits and a lot more patents filed. So all of that is in this index. And perhaps, I don't know how much time we have, but it might be fun to quickly go into some other views as well that help go back to LGBTQ. And let's go to the chart view for a moment. As you see now, very different view. What you see here is the first, you can mouse over those individuals as well. Pittsburgh, of all places, let's quickly hit Pittsburgh and click on it, is way high in terms of funding versus, now, the issue, though, is on the left, you see there's a little red sign. We don't have enough data available. And actually, it's just based on 2 entrepreneurs. Now, 2 entrepreneurs is not enough to be statistically significant. So unfortunately, it's not as great for Pittsburgh as the Pittsburghans, Pittsburghers, not sure what they're called, people from Pittsburgh would like to believe. If we then go, though, to to the totals in that same view, we're just looking at funding right now. There's one amazing finding. Guess what? The vast majority, 4.2 out of 5.5 billion of funding all went to San Francisco or Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. So, and let's quickly go to female, not a totally different picture, even though a little less pronounced, but even there, San Francisco beats everyone. So clearly there's a geographic area, even if you support female and LGBTQ entrepreneurs, it doesn't mean that other areas would suddenly rise to the top right away in terms of total impact on their economies.
So this is fascinating, and there's a question in the chat from Alex that I was actually thinking of myself, which is just, you know, he asks, oh, it just moved down in my chat because we have more chats, but how can the data be known or useful to capital firms and investors who wish to improve inclusion? For example, articles in appropriate journal, presentation to industry events, et cetera. And I'm going to combine that, if you don't mind, Simon, with a question I have, which is you say you see opportunities, and I would just be curious to hear, like, where are you seeing those? You have a lot of boots on the ground with StartOut, and I'm curious, you know, where you see successes and where you might be able to replicate those, and getting this data out there, helping with that.
Great questions, both of them. Jessica, would you please go to map, totals, and LGBTQ? Awesome. So just that in the background. So basically, a couple of things. Here, if you're an investor or if you're a policymaker, where are there some amazing opportunities? The first answer is everywhere. So I know that's not, it's like a waiter who tells you what, you know, you ask what's good and they tell you what everything's good here. Not very helpful. So, but the simple truth is there's a big systemic opportunity in pretty much every area to have a lot more impact. So if you invest, you know, in the Midwest, if you invest in the East Coast, if you invest in Florida, it doesn't matter where you kind of want to do that. There's a lot of opportunities everywhere. So that's actually the positive view of this whole map. In terms of are there specific opportunities? I don't think that we can go on this demo through a lot of the details, but it's really, again, it's a combination of the industry fingerprint and the map itself. You know, through all the data, which areas are actually ripe for some more entrepreneurial activity, which industry and which industries in which areas, right? So with the fingerprint, which is looked at. So if you're looking at, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for clustering of opportunities and see how we can utilize a cluster for more investment, that's one way. So going after the big green dots. If you're looking more kind of underutilized areas, underutilized industries where you have a bigger competitive advantage, maybe some arbitrage opportunities in terms of lesser sharp deals and so on, then you go there. Because closely aligned, and that's, I think, Julie, that's the second question you ask, and how do we know where people are and where they're from and what they're doing, where they're moving. There's a big migration. We know that from our 2016 research we've done, there's a tremendous migration of jobs toward the areas that are more favorable to LGBTQ entrepreneurs. And you can of course see the same in the female index. So if we look at why are these dots so small, it's because a lot of people move to San Francisco. So if you want to change that as an ecosystem builder or as an economist with the city of Chicago or so, this is an opportunity saying, look, we lost all those people. Some of those entrepreneurs moved over there just because there wasn't enough opportunity there. And we've seen that very specific issue actually with our own StartOut Growth Lab. You know, when we went virtual, suddenly we got all those amazing applicants from all those areas do a great job, but they don't want to move necessarily. They want to move their teams. They certainly don't want to be in high wage, high tax areas like San Francisco, New York. They want to move their families, but they could build their businesses if there was enough of an investment climate or an opportunity for talent. They wouldn't want to move them away. So this is an opportunity to use all that data, go to your mayoral office and say, look, these are the opportunities. This is the missed opportunities, the unrealized potential. That's what you can do.
We hear a lot about that in our office, not just with respect to LGBTQ+, but with other entrepreneurs from cities that aren't San Francisco or New York or Boston, you know, on the coast where there are so many, you know, so much of the infrastructure that is built up to help fund companies. And so I'm really fascinated to hear that you're seeing that as well. And I'm curious, you know, you mentioned a couple things about why maybe those cities are not as hospitable and things, the opportunities there for those cities to improve. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what, and maybe it's more anecdotal than data driven, but what are some of those challenges that are faced in those cities that are driving entrepreneurs out of the cities where they want to be?
Great question as well. So there is a quantitative view that I just want to briefly highlight. So we're in all over US. Let's quickly go to plot view. And so this is an opportunity of trying to find correlations, certainly not causalities, but certainly correlations for the economists on the call. We're not talking about causalities just yet. We'd like to soon. But the correlations between various areas, you can see GDP per capita highlighted in the metro population. So let's basically maybe go to jobs versus jobs created versus metro population. And you basically see pretty much no correlation. Actually, let's go to means. Sorry, that's why it's so so skewed. So this is a more meaningful view, of course, controlled against the size of the GDP. So basically, what we're seeing here, there's not much of a correlation between jobs created and metro population. So what it basically says, the reason that San Francisco is so much better is not the population. So that excuse goes out the window if you're in a smaller city. There's still a lot of things you can do, which is good news again. So anecdotally though, and you can explore a lot more depending on what you're looking for, what you're trying to achieve, what you try to optimize to jobs, patents, exits, whatever it is that you're trying to do in your office. We just provide the data here. Anecdotally, it has a lot to do with the available resources in the funding climate. And so there's just not enough risk capital out there. There's not enough of a climate of taking risks that we're so used to in San Francisco and New York. I had two companies actually, if I may say so myself, one in Pittsburgh. So one of the companies was actually mine here. I'm very excited about that. But when I co-founded it, and then one in Florida. And in both cases, it was simply that the whole mindset of what does risk capital mean? What does it mean to have 1 in 10 successes and you're making a killing with your investment? I mean, one of the investors in Tampa, Florida, actually asked me, should I invest in real estate or in you guys when I was an entrepreneur? And I immediately said in real estate. Because if the mindset is not there, that didn't take me a second to respond, because if the mindset is not there, that, there's the kind of the risk you're taking, that's one thing. The other thing though is entrepreneurs don't feel comfortable in many of the areas they're in. It's getting better, right? We're making a lot of progress in a lot of different ways. But if you look at coming out as an entrepreneur, telling your potential investors, angel or venture, by the way, I happen to be queer, that's not something you volunteer. And you wouldn't volunteer that you're Latinx or that you're Black either right off the bat. So we're working on all those, the data sets as well. But these are just things that show there's still incredible systemic barriers out there. And so anecdotally, what you can do is two things. One is go to the big green dots and figure out what they have been doing. So if you're a policymaker. The other one is go to your entrepreneurs and figure out go and ask them, what does it take for you to stay here? What do we need to provide for you to stay here? Could be funding, could be better policies, could be more family-friendly environment, who knows? Right now, everyone is actually, anyway, in a breakthrough mindset. It's kind of where should we be anyway with COVID and everything else. So an amazing opportunity for anyone who wants to use the data to actually use it in these times and make some systemic long-term changes for the benefit of all entrepreneurs.
Well, you've given a lot of great nuggets there, Andres. And you know, one question that we always have, and I think it's sometimes a hard one to answer, but I encourage you to give me any thoughts you have, and same for folks who are chatting in. We welcome your feedback there as well. You know, while we're not, the SEC is, you know, we're not going to be able, the government, you don't want the government to go in and say, this is what you should be investing in, right? Like we want to make available a toolkit for investors and for companies so that they can find that you can find the one that's right for you, and you can use a tool that's understandable and easy, but that fits your needs. And same with the investors, you want to be able to find investors who are the right fit for your company, and investors want to find the right level of risk for them. Maybe they are more of a real estate investor than a high growth entrepreneur investor, but I think there are we do hear from a lot of investors who have enough money that they can afford to take some risk, and who want to be engaged, but are looking for ways to do that. And maybe they don't live in a climate like San Francisco where that risk is around them all the time and they would hear about it at their backyard barbecues. And so, you know, one of the things that we're trying to do is to have educational resources available. And part of that is on our website at www.sec.gov/OASB. I think we posted it earlier in the chat, and we'll post it again. But not just that, but also doing these virtual events, talking with others who, you know, one of the silver linings of the COVID situation that we're in is that people are engaging more virtually, and you're able to learn from entrepreneurs from all over the country and investors who may come from a different, you know, perspective. But I say all that to ask, would be really curious if there are things you can think of that the SEC could be doing to help level the playing field, to help, you know, there's a lot of systemic issues that you've mentioned, and you know, rather to help ameliorate or lessen those gaps. Or do you have any suggestions for us? And that's to you, but also to people who are chatting in. We welcome your feedback.
Thank you for that question. Exactly. So first of all, you're already doing it. So what you are doing right now on this call, what you did, I may share with the audience that we had another call with the SEC's economists. So it was a very, very small call. We called it a wonktastic event. It was really wonky. It was way over my head, but it was awesome. So basically just sharing data. When we were when we held actually the 2 years in a row, the Congressional Summit on Capitol Hill with policymakers, you know, to discuss how they can support us, they said, great, you know, we really want to do the right thing, but unless you give us data, there's nothing we can do, right? We like you guys, we like all your members, we want to help, but unless you give us data, you know, how do you expect us to go? And so basically what you can do, what you are currently doing with this call, with you know, exposing your economists who have huge influence, right? And in so many different ways, to data sources like ours, just making it available, publicize it so it's out there. And of course, lending your name to projects like ours and many others, of course, that do similar things. That is pretty awesome. And so that is the most important thing you can do. We might have other suggestions from the audience, of course, what can be done. But if you keep doing that, if you keep sharing data, if you keep telling people, hey, there are not only people who actually measure all that stuff, that's what we're doing here, but the measuring is not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to improve those numbers behind those measurements, right? That's what we at StartOut do. We actually give hands-on support to all of those, and that's what a lot of organizations do with other communities. So we want them to use the number and actually do something about it. And so that is really, and there are so many awesome, awesome organizations out there who do really great work. We happen to do it in the LGBTQ space, others do it elsewhere. But the more you share that, the more you basically socialize that the data is out there for the taking. It's free, it's available to everyone.
It's amazing. Yeah, well, I want to second that, because I will say that with the engagement that we've been doing with underrepresented founders, whether racially, ethnically, LGBTQ, across the board, we have found so many amazing organizations that are making their educational resources, their data available, you know, I hear people say, oh, I put that on YouTube so that everyone could watch it. And there really are a lot of resources out there, but it is hard to find them because there's a lot of stuff out there. You know, and I wanted to just, there was someone in the chat, I think it was Alex, who said, you know, make access to capital, and especially small access to capital. And that we hear that a lot. And I wanted to let folks know that we're spending all this time talking about data, which is of the utmost importance. But another way that even if you don't have access to all this data, but you have access to your experiences, which is what most people and entrepreneurs have, is to let us know about those. Because the way the SEC makes policy is, what most government agencies do is they'll think about policies, and they'll maybe put out a proposal with a new rule, and then they get comment on that. And so we're constantly getting feedback, either from something that has not yet been proposed or that has been proposed. And people think, oh, you know, I'm not going to write in a comment to the SEC. That's for those big companies to do. And it's for a letter to come in with a lot of footnotes and written by a lawyer. And yes, those big, long footnoted letters are very helpful, and especially when they provide data. But we also get a lot from just individuals emailing and saying, hey, I understand you've made this proposed change about how people can invest in a friends and family round. And let me tell you my story. And those stories often really are very helpful for us to have in the comment file, because it helps us be able to persuade, you know, to show that the rules need to change because of, you know, it's the individual experiences. And it doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be formal. A short email that says, hey, complying with this rule cost me X. That's data. That's helpful to us. It's one person's. It's not obviously going to make the whole rule, but every bit of that we can get is very, very helpful. And we take it very seriously. Every comment letter we get, no matter how formal, how many footnotes or no footnotes, you know, 2 sentences, we read them, we take them into account, and it's very helpful to have. So I just wanted to put in that plug. And if you go to our website, which we posted in the chat earlier, we have some videos on there. I know one of the common complaints we get is that, you know, it's so complicated. It's hard to know what to do, and I need to hire a lawyer, which you do. But you know, you can educate yourself, and you can make that lawyer cost less because you go in knowing more when you walk into the room. And we have videos on our website that describe certain rules that are of particular interest to small businesses. And they're 3 to 5 minute videos. They're not to be confused with the actual rule itself, but they can at least help give you an overview of what the changes are that we're envisioning, or what the rule does. So that you walk into that lawyer or into the next meeting that you have a little more educated, and you can be thinking about the things that are important to you. But one of those videos is about how to comment. And so take a look at that, and hopefully you'll find something that you feel is worth sharing with us, because we'd really like to hear from as many folks as we can. So I'm just looking at some of the chats. I don't know, Andres, if we have particular questions. There's one here from Nadia. Do you see that?
Yes.
How does this new tool track companies that have headquarters in, say, LA, but a team scattered throughout the US? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, so interesting. So, so we basically focus, there's a couple of questions in there. The first one is which entrepreneurs we're focusing on. We only focus on high growth entrepreneurs. And they're defined as either having raised $1 million in angel money or more, venture funding, which is nearly always $1 million or more, have created patents, and had at least 5 patents and at least 1 employee beyond the original guys, actually, who's hired someone who actually could pay salary. And then the last one has had an exit. So these are the 4 criteria. The reason we're doing that is twofold. One is they are the ones that have by far the biggest impact, again, in terms of jobs, exits, funding, and patents. The second one is also, we're measuring the ones, since we're looking first and foremost at the unrealized potential. We're looking at the ones that are undeniably creating new businesses that would not have been created otherwise. If you need a cafe down the corner and the whole neighborhood doesn't have a cafe, someone will come. Be that a straight entrepreneur, gay entrepreneur, Martian entrepreneur, doesn't matter. Someone will come and have the cafe in there. And Martian only because of the orange sky in San Francisco last week was really scary. But totally off topic. But then, so if someone else would have done it anyway, arguably you wouldn't really have unrealized potential. It would only be the unrealized potential for that specific region, but not for the underrepresented population. So that's why we're focusing on those two. Mom and pop shops do great work. I think it's roughly 47% of the economy's small business or some more. I might get that wrong. The SEC can correct me. It's a big number. And so we're obviously capturing only a small portion of that, but that's by design. Also, we want to make sure we compare apples with apples, not apples and oranges. So when we have our population of all entrepreneurs out there, then we want to make sure we capture the exact same population and then use that as the basis for our really complex algorithms, but they're getting better and better. The issue then on how we're measuring support. So it's the founders. We're not looking at, so we look at the companies as a starting point. Let's say a company has 3 founders, 2 in LA and 1 in New York now. So 2/3 of that contribution goes to LA, 1/3 goes to New York. Let's say one of them is female, the other 2 are male. So one third, right, goes into the female index, 2/3 goes into overall, and so on. And so we're only looking then at the founding team. If they have employees elsewhere, that's great, but they don't count for us. They're not in charge of the value creation. They, of course, provide great value to the businesses, but they're not in charge of the value creation. So what we're doing there is proportionally allocating the brain power, if you will, and the outcomes based on the brain power that went in before anyone got paid and before and where they actually happen to reside. There's a lot more details, of course, in the methodology section, but that's in a nutshell what we're trying to do. I hope that helps, Nadia.
So we welcome any other questions. We're running short of time, but we have a couple time for a little bit more if anyone else has a question they'd like to ask about the index. I will just chime in and say that you know, it's the SEC has a pretty active agenda right now in terms of rulemaking, and a lot of that is in the private company capital formation space. We have a proposal out there for public comment. I really encourage folks to go to our website and check it out. We call it the capital formation proposal. And it's got a lot of different amendments to various exemptions. You know, I was mentioning earlier that if you're going to offer securities, you need to either do it publicly through an IPO or have an exemption. There's crowdfunding, there's Regulation A, there's what people call the friends and family round, where you may need to be an accredited investor if you're going to use 506B, or if you're interested in taking on an investor who is not, you know, the definition of accredited. There's a lot of folks who are interested in that, and we have the proposals are out there, and we really want small businesses to comment and tell us what would be most useful to if there are changes that would make it easier for you to raise capital, or if you're wanting to invest, make it easier for you and more appealing. We would very much welcome your feedback on that proposal and other proposals that we have. So I'll just put in that plug, because we're always, as I said, we're always, just like Andres is always looking for data, we're always looking for data. We're also always looking for comments and feedback.
Allow me to mention just one quick thing. Obviously, the plug is always, and a lot of people I see on the list are already engaged with us. So thank you very much for all your engagement with our entrepreneurs, with us, your support. That's awesome. This is obviously a work in progress. It always will be. We're updating this every month, sometimes even more often. So this, you know, we're constantly updating it. We're constantly getting better and better and better data. So if you know of anyone, you know, who could contribute to this, by all means, send them our way. And by all means, you know, take a moment and to explore it further. This call today, we only had a little bit of time to scratch the surface, but there's so much in there, and let us know what works and what doesn't work for you. So this is version 1, right? We're going to have many, many more versions, and eventually we just want more entrepreneurs, more LGBTQ entrepreneurs to succeed. And with your help, we can actually make that happen. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for contributing to the index as well as you see opportunities to share that.
Yeah, and thank you, Andres, for hosting us today. We appreciate the opportunity to reach out to new audiences and to partner with you and enjoy all of your data. We're going to be using, we put out an annual report every year on the state of capital formation for small businesses, and this is definitely StartOut's data. I'm sure will be in there along with many others. So to the extent anyone else has data that they want to share with us, we very much welcome it, and we're so grateful for the opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone here. Really appreciate it. And I think we just have a few minor things that we want to mention. Jessica, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. I just wanted to say that if anyone has questions in regards to the index, I've just dropped our email address, which is speii@startout.org. And here are some of the dates of our next events from StartOut. We have our Equity Summit on November 20th and our Awards Gala as well at the end of this month. So we hope to see you there virtually. And that should be it.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jessica and Andres and the rest of the team. Hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.